Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. As mentioned, I'm Spencer Soloway from Horizen Labs. I am here today talking about how we're going to awaken a cross-chain ecosystem in a cross-chain world. First, before I get into that, at Horizen Labs and at Horizen, we have a couple of missions. Horizen is, a exceedingly robust network of ZK-enabled, cross-chain communication-enabled blockchains. Horizen Labs is a primary builder on that chain. It is really tasked with a mission of both securing the world's transition to Web3 and providing all of the potential tools and infrastructure that's needed to do so. So that's all to say that we think quite a lot about how we build and define and sort of move forward with cross-chain ecosystems. I know, the previous conversation here was with Connext, and they have a very interesting standard-focused view on how that is going to be done. So, this is not necessarily to contradict that vision, which I think is a very good and strong one. It's more, in a lot of ways to talk about how we see this from a chain perspective, from a builder perspective, and the truth is that there is not one right answer, nor should there be one right answer, right? Because as we've seen in the prior market, we need to have multiple ins, outs, ways that chains communicate with each other, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. So first off, how do we define a cross-chain ecosystem? And I think that the first place to kind of start there is, why does it matter that we have one? There are over 1,000 public blockchains. There are over 200 EVMs, alone out there. A lot of them are general purpose. A few of them are usable, and by that I mean they have sort of fully built out robust ecosystems with multiple reasons for you or I to actually go on and use them. But, there are a lot more where there may be one application either by design, hopefully, or by chance that you want to use. This also results in there being over 22,000 tokens of various flavors out there. And, today, although a lot of chains either are or are trying to be general purpose, we're already kind of seeing the rise of both the app chain or what I like to call the sector-specific chain. Not every chain is just one app like DYDX, right? There are chains like also, if you look at Cosmos, there are a number of these like Akash or Kujira, where they are sort of closed ecosystems that are built for specific purposes. There are chains like Immutable, right, which are built for specific purposes. And are not so much general chains, but they're not quite app chains, but they have very specified reasons for being. And, within all of these, it's only going to continue to fracture in that way. And there are a lot of reasons for it, right? We talk about a future where there's not just an internet for people, there's an internet for refrigerators, right? There's an internet for cars. And for people, there are internets for banking, there are internets for gaming, and so forth, right? And that's a vision that I think we want to keep because there's a reason to have purpose-built chains, but it's really important to make sure that those chains are all talking to each other in a meaningful way. So that gets us into the importance of interoperability protocols, and we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of that as we go on. The first one is increased liquidity, right? So the general purpose chains, the top 10, 20 EVMs in the world, they all have solid liquidity, right? But, when you're talking about newer chains, when you're talking about smaller chains, when you're talking about purpose-built chains, they don't necessarily have that liquidity. And in a lot of cases, they don't necessarily have a way to kind of bring in that liquidity, right? At Horizen Labs, we're fairly blessed because we have a long history, and so as we're building out our EVM, we will be able to make sure that there is liquidity there from day one, right? For a lot of chains, that is not necessarily the case. And what it results in is it results in developers building chain-specific apps that are really great and really powerful and ultimately unusable because there's no liquidity there. So that then becomes an ease of use issue for users, right? On that side. There's also an ease of use issue in terms of switching between networks, different standards across networks, sort of different expectations of where you can go, as well as kind of the things that we don't see but we know are important, like data availability, settlement layers, and so forth. Once we have true interoperability, however, it not only makes things easier to use, but it enables these more complex use cases and applications. We don't have to use the same settlement layer as the same data availability layer. We can get our security from where it makes sense. And we don't have to be kind of locked in to one area. So, ultimately, again, for consumers, once we get to true interoperability, we're going to see better, less complex UX and UI. For developers, it's going to be easier to build across blockchains. You can build where is right for you to build. You don't have to build on Ethereum if Ethereum is not right for you just because that's where the liquidity is, right? And it will allow for reduced complexity of multi-chain deployments as well. And we'll, again, talk about that as we go on a little bit, too. And, for enterprises, it's going to de-risk blockchains, allow you to kind of spread that risk across multiple blockchains, allow you to go and pick different areas to do different parts of your business, and really be able to deploy multiple use cases. So, and this is a lot of text, but I will give folks a chance to read it if they want while I talk, because I do think it's important. But ultimately, I think that where we're going to be going is we're going to see increased use of single blockchains, single use case blockchains, increased use of single sector blockchains. And we're also going to see a move that we're already seeing right now with sort of interoperability and cross-chain communication moving beyond the sort of simplified version of it that it was in the last bull market, which really was very heavily reliant on these sort of router bridges, right, to just sort of move tokens from chain to chain. And moving tokens from chain to chain, as you've seen from what I've said before, and as I'm sure you know, is going to continue to be really important. But what we really want to move past are these situations where blockchains are heavily reliant on one bridge, right? We saw this quite a bit in the last bull market. We saw this with Axie Infinity. We saw this with Harmony. We saw it to a lesser degree with Phantom, although obviously it had huge effects, but they were already sort of starting to get ahead of that. And that's something that I think for mass adoptability and for us to be truly successful and have sustainable sort of that eternal bull run, it needs to be fixed. And it is being fixed now through a number of other sort of messaging bridges and arbitrary messaging bridges as well. So, we're working on this at Horizen in a couple of different ways. And we're working on it from the perspective of having a network of blockchains, as well as having an EVM, as well as somebody who works on cross-chain communication as well. So really quickly about us. So those of you who have kind of followed us for a while know that back in 2017, we were started as a privacy token. We did that by inheriting a ZK snark circuit from Zcash, building quite a bit off of the Bitcoin code base. We are no longer a privacy coin. We're actually in the process right now of removing the very last of the shielded pools on our network, and we are really much more focused on security in a holistic and meaningful way for users. And that's kind of led us to today, where we have the zero-knowledge network of blockchains. And it's powered, as you can see here, by the largest node system and cross-chain protocol, Zendu. And you can kind of see the key points under that. That shows itself through a number of proprietary technologies that we've built, the underlying Horizen blockchain, Zendu, and cross-chain communication protocols. Eon, our soon-to-be launched Ethereum virtual machine chain, and Cobalt, our web wallet as well. So essentially, we've built a snark-enabled cross-chain protocol. This allows us to focus both on scalability and interoperability. It's really important on the interoperability part, and one of the things that you can see here is that this is consensus agnostic. It's also ultimately machine agnostic. So you'll see a lot of people talk about how EVMs can talk to each other, or Axelar, which is an amazing product that allows WASMs and EVMs to talk to each other. But that's not enough, because although I think everybody here is a big believer in the EVM vision and the Ethereum vision, the truth is that there are a lot of things being built on WASM. There are a lot of things being built on Solana virtual machines. There are still a lot of things being built on Bitcoin-style UTXO machines as well. So it's really important to us, as we've been designing this and rolling this out, that the cross-chain transfer protocol can talk across machines, right? Today, you can actually go and use that, and you can use what we call the backward transfer mechanism, and you can transfer Zen from the UTXO main chain, right, across and back from Eon, which is an EVM chain. And that's something that I really want to hammer home on. Because in the future, we can't expect every single app chain and every single use case to be EVM. We would like a lot of it to be, and I'm sure that a lot of it to be, and it is a standard for a reason, but it is not going to encompass the entirety of the world. We have an in-house cryptography team. I don't want to brag too much, but I do think it's one of the best in the world. I like to say it's the best in the world. We have contributed greatly to Plonky 2, to Poseidon and Poseidon 2. Snarks are utilized throughout the ecosystem in terms of scalability, in terms of horizontal bridging, and in terms of both securely and from a sort of privacy perspective as well. Do that kind of communication. So that brings us to Eon. And Eon is one of the reasons that we're here this week, besides the fact that obviously we are here in Milan and we want to be supporting, but we want to make sure that everybody knows about Eon. Eon is one of the first sidechains in the Horizen ecosystem. It is our first EVM-compatible sidechain, likely not the last. And it is really built around being a user and developer-friendly ecosystem. And by that, we really wanted to build something that wasn't just another chain to go and use a lot of the blue chips on, right? There's a lot of great things about Aave and Curve and Uniswap and a lot of places that you can use those, and that's not to say that you won't eventually be able to use them here, but our short-term mission was really thinking about, okay, what is the next generation of developers and applications and people that we want to go on. And a big part in attracting people to do that, and I hope that a lot of you will come and either use the system or build on it, is having this best-in-class support. And that comes not just from a BD standpoint, from a liquidity standpoint, from a tool standpoint, from an integration standpoint, but it comes from a cross-chain interoperability standpoint. And we are achieving interoperability today in a number of ways. And I think that this is where it's really important to say that we're in this transitionary moment, right? And so it is important to have either traditional or new versions of sort of traditional bridges, improved versions of bridges. We work with WanChain, we work with Synapse, there will be a number of others of those coming on. We also work very closely with Layer 0 in terms of interchain operability. Layer 0, I think, has a vision of the future that makes a lot of sense and aligns very closely with ours. This idea that you can seamlessly exchange liquidity across chains, this idea that I can deploy on one chain and then launch on others as long as I am deployed on their fabric. This idea of a relayer and oracle system is really exciting to us as well. And that's one of those things where when we talk about a future where you can use an application and not even necessarily know which chain you're on, that's where that's going to start to come in. There's also intrachain operability, right? And we talked about it a little bit before with Zendu, with backward transfer, with the fact that sending not just token messages, but arbitrary messages of any sort across the chains within our network will continue to be easy, cost-effective, and really best in class. So where we see things in Web3 in 2024 and beyond. You know, we're going to see a lot of different blockchains, a lot of interconnected blockchains, a lot of things that, you know, have aspects that are consumer-facing, have aspects that are business-facing. We are going to see systems where they are partially permissioned, where there are chains that are permissioned that are interacting with non-permissioned chains. We are going to see, you know, systems where, you know, we see gaming and NFTs separated from DeFi, but needing to be connected, right? We're going to see more specialized chains. We're going to see more chains start to outsource either security or data availability or settlement or any of these other things, and be able to kind of better take advantage of all of these great messaging protocols that are being built. And, you know, the best thing is that we're going to see reduced fees, right? The beauty of solid cross-chain communication is that it will allow you to do things in different places that make the most sense for your application. You will not be trapped into one chain. You will not be trapped into one world. You'll be able to draw for different things that we talked about before to each of those. Okay, so that is what I have for you, but I am happy to answer any questions or talk about anything else in particular.